if you have an email list or you have an online brand, chances are you've dealt with bots one way or another. Bots are super annoying, especially when you have plenty of other things going on in your business. Now, I've helped a bunch of clients remove bots from their email lists. It's a very common issue that I see isn't well documented. So I've put together, quick step-by-step instruction on removing bots from your email list and making sure you keep them out. If you don't know who I am, I'm Matthew Gale. I'm the founder of the Kaizen Blitz. We are a retention marketing agency that focuses on email, SMS, and direct mail. We've worked with 70 plus e-commerce brands in the last 4 years, and we sent over 150 million emails. So I know a thing or two when it comes to getting rid of bots because I've had so many clients reach out to me and help them out with this. So just to get started, one thing to note, this guide is made specifically for Klaviyo. It gives instruction on how to find bots within Klaviyo, but it can apply to any other ESP like MailChimp, OmniSend, SendLane, you name it. So just keep that in mind as we go along. So let's get started. Number one, why is this important? So this is important for two reasons. Number one, it hurts your deliverability, and two, you're paying more in software costs. So when it comes to deliverability, bots can oftentimes open up your emails and engage with them. And sometimes that can mean that they could be sending them to spam. Other times, bots will often scrape real email addresses and use those to sign up to your email list. But when these real people are signing up or receiving your emails and they see that, hey, I didn't subscribe to this, they can easily just start sending your emails to spam, and then users start getting sent to the spam box, which is not something we want. So that's something to keep in mind. Number two, Klaviyo charges based on list size. So keeping bots means that you're paying to send emails to fake addresses that will never convert to customers. So you're just paying more in software costs, and you're just wrecking your deliverability in the first place. Next up, how do you know if you have bots? So bots kind of form similar patterns that you will oftentimes see. So number one if you see lots of new profiles are being made and uploaded into Klaviyo. So if you regularly get 100, 200 emails per day in your Klaviyo account, and then you see an influx of like 1,000 or 2,000, but you're not doing anything, you're not increasing paid acquisition, you're not getting a huge boost in traffic from SEO, etc. So that's something to keep in mind. Another one is random characters and letters for the first and last name. So you can see that right here. If I just zoom in, both these first and last names are identical. So you can see Isaiah, Alexia. Those are obviously fake. And then also first and last names have random letters. So these are completely just random first and last names. These just look like you just smashed your hand on the keyboard. So these are obviously fake. And also you could kind of note, you can kind of tell from like random email addresses, you can tell sometimes they'll have a plus sign, sometimes they'll have random characters. You just have to kind of spot check this as well when you're going through. So now that we got that out of the way, let's start getting into how we can remove these bots. So number one, we have to plug the hole. We have to find out where these bots are coming from. 9 times out of the 10, you're going to find them coming from your website or your pop-up forms, right? Oftentimes they can come from Typeform, a B2B/distributor channel, or even from social media if you have a link in your Instagram bio that automatically gets directed to Klaviyo. So you have to kind of come up with, figure these out. A good way to figuring this out is looking at the information bots input when they enter your system. So if you're on Klaviyo and you're taking a look at these bots, is there a first name? Is there a last name? Is there a phone number? Are there custom properties, right, that they're inputting? Think about how a bot can input this information into your system. If there's more than a generic email address, they're likely coming in through a form. And so that's something you guys have to keep in mind as you are trying to plug the hole and figure this out. So common ways that bots are coming in and common ways you can plug the holes. Number one, bots, like I said, will come through your store by making an account on Shopify. I'm going to pull this up just right in a second. So here's a quick example of a brand that I just found. They have a create account page, and you can input name, last name, email, and password, right? And then you could just press create. And so what oftentimes bots will do is they'll just input random information. They'll put in a random email address and then a password, and then just press create. And it's all systematized so that they just repeatedly go through the system, right? So an easy way to circumnavigate this is to activate HCAPTCHA on your Shopify store. Now, if you're on WooCommerce or Magento, I'm sure that I don't know exactly if those software plans offer this type of HCAPTCHA, but I'm sure that they do. So I would just double check to see where the options are and look it up on Google. If you want to activate this on your Shopify store, you just have to go on your sales channels, online store preferences, and then enable these two options so that there's HCAPTCHA and there's no bots just going through and blasting your email list. Other options include signing up for reCAPTCHA. reCAPTCHA is owned by Google, so you could easily just sign up for this. It's completely free for up to 10,000 submissions per month, which for most brands is going to be perfectly fine. You won't have to pay a premium for this. So you could set this up, get a developer to upload it into your Shopify store or Magento, WooCommerce, etc., and then you should be fine there. Other bots sometimes join from a pop-up or form. So you can set up a honeypot on your pop-ups and forms. This is pretty straightforward. I'm not going to get too deep into this. What it is it's essentially an input, like a button that is invisible to the human eye. So like if someone's scrolling on mobile or desktop, they can't really see it. It blends in with the background, or it's just you can't really see it at all. But a bot can't really detect the difference, right? What they'll see is that they'll just read the code. They'll say, okay, put my email address in here, and then they'll just press the button automatically and go straight next to it. So you can set up a segment where, if profiles are coming into your Klaviyo account and they're submitting this form, they're pressing on this honeypot, then those are bots, right? And so obviously you can do it that way too. You could just look it up on Google. It's not too complicated. It's pretty straightforward. So let's plug in the holes. Now let's go ahead and find these bots and get rid of them and kick them out, right? So most bots will follow a similar pattern. So you have to analyze the pattern and see where they might be coming from. So this comes from a multitude of different things. Number one is like the email address, right? So do they look real and authentic? Is there any consistency? Sometimes bots will enter random email addresses like this. So they'll put in a plus sign, or there'll be a fake domain. You have to kind of look out for this stuff and kind of just spot check it and see like, hey, does this look fishy? Because most of the time, like, no one puts in an email address with a plus sign, or they'll have like a random domain. Virtually almost all credible profiles will have a good domain, or it's a pretty straightforward name. Even if it's weird, it's not going to have characters like a plus sign. So that's something to keep in mind as you are scraping through. I know clients will have talked to me and said, I don't know if this is a bot. This might be a profile. Like, if you think it might be a bot, it's probably a bot. Like, if it stands out like it's a bot, then it probably is one. So that's one thing you keep in mind. Also, for an email address, is there only an email address? So this can kind of give you insight on, okay, is there any other info that they inputted? What else can I use to figure out, like, how can I put all these bots together? Number two is a first and last name. So if there is a first and last name, where could a bot enter a first and last name info, right? Other things are like, do they contain a number? Do they contain a character, like an exclamation mark or an @ sign or a number sign? Bots can oftentimes will just add this in, and so they won't really care. But if you can find this out, it makes it a lot easier to find them, gather them, and delete them. Number three is source. So check the source to see where they might be coming from. Sometimes there'll be like a pop-up form or a type form. You can find this all on Klaviyo. So for example, this is a random bot account right here. They never subscribe to their email list, and their source is empty. So if their source is empty, oftentimes that means that it's coming from Shopify. If I've also seen like -50, that's also one too. But this bot, from what I've seen, it's coming from Shopify, for example. So something to keep in mind. Number four is phone number. So oftentimes bots will not produce a phone number, but if they do, where could a bot enter a phone number? Another thing to keep in mind. Number five is locale or location. Most bots will come in the same country or locale. So you have to look for similarities and see, are they coming from a similar region? Are they coming from a different area? Most of the time, they'll come from the same country. So for example, for these profiles that I found and scraped for a client, these bots were coming in with just random first and last names, and also their locale was set to Ecuador. It was either Ecuador or Panama. And so that's something to keep in mind. Like, you can kind of scrape through and say, okay, these are coming from these two places. That's also a way that I could segment this out in Klaviyo. And I'll give you a real world example of how this kind of looks inside the segment in Klaviyo. And then number six is activity. So are they engaging on your website? So most bots will just enter your email list and won't do anything else. When a customer comes onto your website, let's say like they're a first time customer and they're about to buy, they're about to purchase, they enter their email information into Shopify, but they don't buy. Shopify holds that information and then they can store it for Klaviyo so that you can, if you have flow set up, you can have flow set up for abandoned cart, abandoned checkout. And so if this activity is happening and it's not happening for the bots, this is just an easy one to like exclude, just to make sure you're not excluding, or just to make sure you're not deleting profiles that could potentially be customers. So that's also another thing to keep in mind. When you analyze the similarities between a lot of these bots, you can just make a segment of these profile properties in Klaviyo to delete them all at once. Now, after you delete them all, you might find some bot accounts are more difficult to scrape. Some of them just like get on by, maybe they didn't meet a parameter. So you'll just have to go through and delete these manually. So that's fine. And then one thing to note is cleaning your list with a third-party email list cleaner probably won't work. So if you look at like Million Verifier or Never Bounce, most of these bots are using real email addresses that are active and valid. So verifying software won't catch the bot accounts because they are active and verified. Okay, so you found some similarities with your bots. You kind of have an understanding of what you're kind of looking for. Next is that we just had to delete these bots. They're not worth suppressing. Let's just delete them entirely. It's going to be a lot easier for us. So here's some real world examples of some segments I created for a client. Number one is this bots section, is this bots segment. So here, what I kind of found for this client was that their source was not set for most of these bots. Same thing for here. The source is not set here, so that reaches a parameter. Next, their phone number is not set. So these bots aren't inputting in a phone number, and so we can use that to our advantage to make sure that not only are we collecting all these bots, but we're excluding any potential like real email submissions or customers. So that's something to also keep in mind. Another thing too is that we noticed that a lot of these bots, like here, like this one for example, contained their first and last name either contained an X, a V, a Q, or a Z. So these are not common letters to use in a first and last name. And so we kind of these are not common letters, right? So these are not common letters in first and last names. So we kind of rounded up the bots this way as well. But after doing all of this, we even saw that there's still some customers in here in this segment. So we excluded people who are in an organization, as well as any activity that they might have done. So placed order or checkout started. That's something to also keep in mind. And then this segment was pretty much filled with bots and we got to delete them. However, there were still bots in the account. And so there is another segment that we created. So another segment that we created that we got rid of was country equals Panama and locale country equals PA. Same thing here for Ecuador. We're about to do this for this account, but it still applies. You can use the locale, you can use the location. Next is that accepts marketing is false. So a lot of these bots that came in from Shopify, they did not accept marketing. And so we can use that to our advantage and make sure we're excluding all the other customers. And then lastly, we excluded activity. And then after that, this entire section was filled with bots and we got rid of them. So you can go ahead and use these segments definitions as a benchmark, as a tool, as an example of what you can look out for when it comes to getting rid of a bot. And there you go. This is how you get rid of bot accounts from your Klaviyo email list. Keep in mind, this also applies to other email lists. It does not only apply to Shopify, it also applies to WooCommerce and Magento as well. So use this framework to get rid of bots. Look out for them, get rid of them, and hopefully you'll be able to start sending emails again without emailing all these bots and ruining your deliverability and also save costs on Klaviyo. So if you like this video, leave a like, subscribe, leave some comments if you have any questions, and otherwise, I'll talk to you later.